Hello students, welcome to the last session on bonding in solids. In the previous session, we have discussed what is X-ray diffraction and Bragg's law. X-ray diffraction is a study in which uh, we determine the structure of the crystal or structure of the unit cell or arrangement of atoms and molecules in the crystal, which is called as X-ray crystallography also. So basic law in X-ray crystallography is the Bragg's law, isn't it? So we have derived the Bragg's law, which is 2d sine theta is equal to n lambda, isn't it? Now the phenomena of X-ray diffraction is employed to determine the structure of the solids as well as X-ray spectroscopy, isn't it? In this X-ray diffraction technique, we determine the structure of the solids, the structure of the unit cell, and the atoms, arrangement of atoms and molecules in the crystal, as well as X-ray spectroscopy, in which we determine the wavelength of the X-rays. The underlying principle in Bragg's law for first order reflections from all atomic planes, we have 2d sine theta is equal to n lambda. For first order reflections, n is equal to 1. Therefore, 2d sine theta is equal to lambda. The reflections will take place for those values of d, theta and lambda. D is the interplanar spacing and theta is the angle of reflection and lambda is the wavelength and n is the order, isn't it? So for first order, second order, n takes integral values. Reflections will take place for those values of d, theta and lambda which satisfy above equation. For structural analysis of X-rays of known wavelength, for structural analysis, X-rays of known wavelength are used. So, to determine the structure of the solids, we have to employ the X-rays of which wavelength is known. And the angles for which reflections take place are determined experimentally, isn't it? So here what we know is lambda and we determine the angle of reflection theta, isn't it? And from which we determine the interplanar spacing, isn't it? So this, with the help of this interplanar spacing, we can determine the structure of the crystals. The d values corresponding to reflections are obtained from above equations. Using this information, we can determine the size of unit cell and distribution of atoms within the unit cell. So we can determine the size of the unit cell as well as the distribution, arrangement of atoms within the unit cell. In X-ray spectroscopy, X-rays are incident on crystals of known value of d. So, we employ the X-rays of which wavelength is to be determined on the crystals of which we know the d value, that is the interplanar spacing. The value of theta, the angle for which reflections take place, is measured, isn't it? So, we know d, we measure theta, we know value of d, we measure value of theta by experimental method and we can determine this value of lambda, isn't it? So the value of theta, the angle for which reflections take place is measured and lambda is determined. This is called as X-ray spectroscopy, isn't it? So we can determine the structure of the crystal as well as we can determine the wavelength of the X-rays. So first method is the Lau's method, isn't it? So Lau studied the diffraction in crystals in detail, isn't it? And he developed a method which is named after his name, that is the Lau's method. and experimental arrangement used to produce Laus pattern is shown in figure. So here the experimental method is shown. This is a collimator. So X-ray beam from X-ray tube is passed through this collimator. Collimator makes a fine beam which collimates the beam, which makes a parallel beam, narrow parallel beam. There are two photographic plates. A forward for forward reflections, this is the photographic plate, and for the back reflections, this is the photographic plate. And this is a goniometer, on which there is a crystal holder and a small crystal is mounted on the spindle, we can call it as. A small crystal of which we have to determine the structure is mounted on this spindle, isn't it? And this is a photographic plate after developing, isn't it? After experiment, when you develop the photographic plate, you get such type of spots, isn't it, which reflect the arrangement of atoms and molecules in the crystal. A sample is placed on the goniometer, which can be rotated to change the orientation of the crystal, isn't it? So a sample of which we want to study the structure, isn't it, arrangement of atoms and molecules, is placed on the goniometer, which can be rotated to change the orientation of the crystal. So there is an arrangement to rotate the crystal. Two flat photographic films are used, one for receiving the transmitted diffracted beam and other for receiving the reflected diffracted beam, for back reflection experiments, isn't it? So one photographic plate is for transmitted diffracted beam and another for back reflection, isn't it? So two photographic plates are used. Such experiments are performed particularly when there is an excessive absorption of X-rays in the crystal. So such experiments are performed particularly when there is an excessive absorption. If the absorption of the X-rays is more, isn't it? In the experiments where excessive absorption of X-rays in the crystal is there, in such experiment, this method is used. Initially, a single crystal specimen having dimensions of the order of 1 millimeter into 1 millimeter into 1 millimeter is held stationary in the path of the white X-rays having wavelengths ranging from 0.1 to 2 angstrom unit. So the crystal is mounted on this spindle and the size of the crystal is of the order of 1 millimeter into 1 millimeter into 1 millimeter. It is very small, maybe the size of a sugar grain, isn't it? So such type of crystal is mounted on this spindle, isn't it? And it is exposed, it is irradiated with X-rays, white X-rays. White X-rays means the X-rays having various wavelengths, isn't it? Different wavelengths. Like white light, we have different wavelengths ranging from 3500 angstrom to 7500 angstrom. So that is called as a visible spectrum, isn't it? So here the X-rays that are used are 0.2 to 2 angstrom. Since the crystal containing a number of sets of parallel atomic planes with different interplanar spacing, diffraction is possible for certain values of lambda and d, which satisfies Bagg's condition. Crystal is made up of number of atomic planes. There are sets of parallel atomic planes having different interplanar spacing. There may be they may be having different interplanar spacing. The spacing between these atomic planes may be different, isn't it? So diffraction is possible for certain values of lambda and d which satisfy condition. So the X-rays get diffracted where this condition, Bragg's condition, is satisfied for certain values of wavelength and interplanar spacing. The diffraction spots are produced on photographic films as shown in figure. I have already shown the diffraction pattern. This is the diffraction pattern. So, or Laus pattern it is called, isn't it? So, we get this after development of the photographic plate. The crystal can be rotated with the help of goniometer to change orientation with respect to incident beam, isn't it? So, as the crystal is placed on the spindle and the spindle can be rotated, the crystal can be rotated with the help of goniometer to change the orientation. We can change the orientation of the crystal with respect to incident beam. By doing so, diffraction condition may be satisfied for a new set of atomic planes, and hence a different type of pattern may be obtained on photographic film, isn't it? The symmetry of the crystal is, however, reflected in each pattern. So, when this diffraction pattern produced on the photographic plate reflect the symmetry, isn't it? Symmetry of the atoms and molecules in the crystal. So, for each reflection the pattern may be different. Laus method is mostly used to determine the crystal symmetry, isn't it? So, this method is usually employed to determine crystal symmetry. For example, if the crystal having fourfold axial symmetry is oriented so that its axis is parallel to the beam, the resulting Laus pattern also exhibits fourfold symmetry. If the crystal is having a fourfold symmetry, the Laus pattern exhibits that type of symmetry in it, isn't it? So, the symmetry of the pattern helps to determine the shape of the unit cell. With the help of this symmetry, we can determine the size of the unit cell. It is, however, not practicable to determine the structure of the crystal by this method. So, the structure cannot be determined. We can determine the unit cell arrangement of atoms. It is because a number of wavelengths may be reflected from a single plane in different orders and may superimpose at a single point, resulting in the loss of number of reflections. So, due to this difficulty, it is not practicable. The symmetry of the Laus pattern also helps to orient the crystals for various solid state experiments. For different solid state experiments, the symmetry of the Laus pattern also helps to orient the crystals, isn't it? Another application of Laus method is to determine determination of imperfection or stains in the crystal. If there are certain imperfections in the crystal, we can study these imperfection in the crystal with the help of Laus method. An imperfect or stained crystal has atomic planes which are not exactly plane, that are slightly curved. So, what are the imperfections? The imperfections or stains are atomic planes which are not exactly plane, but they are curved. Such type of imperfections can be studied, isn't it? Stains or imperfections can be studied by this Laus method. Thus, instead of sharp diffraction spots, one gets streaks in the Laus pattern. Instead of sharp diffraction spots, we get streaks in the Laus pattern. This type of streaking on Laus photographs is called as asterism. So, this type of streaking is called as asterism. So, with this asterism, we can determine the imperfections in the crystal. So, this is all about the Laus diffraction method. Now, let us study what is a rotating crystal method, isn't it? This is the last article from this unit. In this method, a monochromatic beam of X-rays is incident. In the previous method, Laus method, we have used a white X-ray beam which is consisting of range of X-rays. Here we use monochromatic X-rays, X-rays of single wavelength. So in this method, a monochromatic beam of X-rays is incident on a crystal mounted on a rotating spindle. So here it is again a rotator. There is a spindle which can be rotated, and it is having an arrangement to mount a crystal, isn't it? Such that one of its crystallographic axis coincides with the axis of rotation, which is kept perpendicular to the direction of the beam. So in this method, a monochromatic beam of X-rays is incident on a single crystal mounted on a rotating spindle. So this is an arrangement which is not shown. That is, X-ray tube is not shown, and this is a collimator, and this is undeviated X-rays can come out of this opening, isn't it? And this is a cylindrical drum. On the inner side of the cylindrical drum, a photographic film is pasted, and such type of lines are produced on the photographic plate. These are called as layer lines, isn't it? In this method, a monochromatic beam of X-rays is incident on a single crystal mounted on a rotating spindle, such that one of its crystallographic axis coincides with the axis of rotation. So crystallographic axis coincides with axis of rotation, which is kept perpendicular to the direction of the incident beam. A single crystal having dimensions of the order of 1 millimeter. So 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter is positioned at the center of cylindrical holder. The cylindrical holder, isn't it? So this is a cylinder, and at the center of the cylinder there is a spindle on which the crystal is mounted. A single crystal having dimensions of the order of 1 millimeter is positioned at the center of cylindrical holder, concentrating with the rotating spindle as shown in figure. A photographic film is attached at the inner circular surface of the cylinder. I have already told to this drum, cylindrical drum, on the inner side photographic film is attached. The diffraction takes place from those planes which satisfy the Bragg's law for a particular angle of rotation. Here the diffraction takes place from those planes which satisfy the Bragg's law for a particular angle of rotation. The planes parallel to the axis of rotation. The planes which are parallel to the axis of rotation diffract the incident rays in a horizontal plane. However, reflections cannot be observed for those planes which always contain the incident beam. The planes inclined to the rotation axis produce reflections above and below horizontal plane, isn't it? So, this is a horizontal plane, L is equal to 0 is there. So, and these lines are produced for the inclined planes. So, the planes parallel to the axis of rotation diffract the incident rays in a horizontal plane. However, reflections cannot be observed for those planes which always contain the incident. The planes inclined to the rotating axis produce reflections above and below the horizontal plane depending upon the angle of inclination. Depending upon the angle of inclination, these lines are produced on the photographic plate due to reflections from the atomic planes. The horizontal lines produced by diffraction spots on the photographic film are called as layer lines. So these lines are called as layer lines, isn't it? If the crystal is positioned such that its C-axis, so you know what is meant by A, B and C axis, crystallographic axis, which determine the size and shape of the unit cell. If the crystal is positioned such that C-axis coincides with the axis of rotation, all the planes with Miller indices of the type HK0 will produce a central layer line. They will produce a central layer line when the C-axis coincides with the axis of rotation. isn't it? So axis of rotation and C axis, when they coincide, all the planes with Miller indices of the type HK0 will produce the central layer line. Likewise, the planes having Miller indices of the type HKL and HKL complement will produce layer lines above and below the central line respectively, and so on. These layer lines are shown in the figure. We have just now seen the layer lines. These are the layer lines. L is equal to 0, L is equal to -1, L is equal to +1, like that, isn't it? The vertical spacing between the layer lines depends on the distance between the lattice points along the axis. So from these layer lines, isn't it? What these layer lines depict? The vertical spacing between the layer lines depends on distance between the lattice point along the C axis. What is the distance between the lattice points along the C axis is depicted by the distance between the layer line. Hence, the distance C can be measured. So, the unit cell parameter C can be determined, measured from the photographic film. Similarly, we can determine translation vectors A and B by mounting the crystal along A and B axis respectively. So, if you mount that crystal along A axis or B axis, we can determine the values of A and B, like that we have determined the C. Thus, the dimensions of unit cell can be determined. In this way, by determining the values of A, B and C, we can determine the size of the unit cell, isn't it? So, in this way, we come to the end of the unit. So, in this unit, we have studied the theory of bonds, isn't it? Then we have studied 5 different types of bonds: ionic bond, covalent bond, metal bond, hydrogen bond, and van der Waals bond. Then we have studied what is meant by X-ray diffraction, what is Bragg's law in X-ray diffraction, what is X-ray crystallography method, isn't it? Then we have studied the Lau's diffraction method, Lau's method, and then at the end we have studied the rotating crystal method. So, we come to the end of the session as well as end of the topic, isn't it? So, let us take a leave here. So, let us stop here. In the next session, we will start with the next unit. Till then, take care. Have a nice time. Subscribe, like, and share our channel, and press the bell icon so that you can receive the notifications. Thank you. Thank you very much.